Welcome, everyone, to the Country Club Leaders Podcast. Today, we're lucky to have Kevin Rhoads. Kevin is the Director of Instruction at the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts. He's been there for 21 years. He's also the golf coach for the men's and women's team for Harvard University. He's coached the women's team for 19 years and the men's team for 11 years. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks so much. That's great, Leo. Appreciate being on.
And I don't know how many guys I'm going to interview or girls or women I'm going to interview that have spent time in Thailand. That's pretty unbelievable. We were talking before the podcast.
Yeah, it was really fun. I went briefly on my honeymoon as part of some travels in Southeast Asia, so it was really fun.
It's a great place, and it's so far away. I think most Americans really don't know that much about it.
Yep.
I know I have a couple of brothers that fought in the Vietnam War, and things have changed since 1970.
Indeed.
Uh, it, it's a modern place.
Yeah. Yeah, we found that as well. People said go well, you can before it changes a lot, but we felt like there was a really nice mix between, some of the cultural stuff that was traditional and then also, modern stuff as well.
So what caught my eye right away is you're the golf coach for Harvard University. That's unbelievable.
It's
And then when I contacted you, you said you were on a golf trip in Australia and New Zealand.
No one
So
should be that
can,
lucky.
can you tell us about your golf trip to New Zealand and Australia?
Yeah, so by NCAA rules, once in 4 years, you're allowed to travel internationally, and not a lot of teams do it, or maybe they do it for some sort of a competition. We have a director of golf, Fred Schernecker, who's a Harvard grad and played basketball, was captain of the basketball team, owns and runs a couple companies, but he volunteers in the capacity of director of golf at Harvard because he loves it and he's great at helping and mentoring people. And from when he hired me 20 years ago, and it was something that he thought was of big value to be able to do this. And so I've been very fortunate. I've gone on 4 trips with the ladies and started coaching them in 2004, and I've been on now 3 trips with the men. Started coaching them in 2000. I started coaching both in 2012, and as an update, I'm now just coaching the men's team. We have an exceptional women's. She was our assistant coach, and then became associate head coach, and then definitely wanted her to be able to have room to keep on growing and be a mentor for young ladies. So now I'm coaching the men's team as of this year, and we actually did this trip with both teams. We've never done it that way. They've always been separate. We went to Melbourne first for 5 days, and then we went to Tasmania for 2 days because it was
Wow.
so close, and then North Island, New Zealand for 4 or 5 days. So, yeah, so, as an absolutely exceptional trip, unbelievable to see that part of the world, see those places, see those famous golf courses in the Melbourne Sandbelt area.
Right, right, right.
Tasmania, the new courses, Barnbougle Dunes and Barnbougle Lost Farm, and then North Island, New Zealand is about as dramatic and picturesque as you can get, and some exceptional golf courses as well. So.
Now, did you compete against any schools in Australia or New Zealand or?
Didn't this time. Some of the time it ends up being that way where we have competition, but to do a foreign tour, you don't technically have to do that. But when we do it, it's sometimes there's a school that we'll compete against. Sometimes last time the men were there, we actually played against some of the interclub teams in Melbourne, and their interclub teams, I didn't really know what to expect, and they were. We played Royal Melbourne, which was sensational, and the guys there were unbelievable and unbelievable hosts and so fun and good, and maybe closer to my age and stuff. But at a couple of the other places, their interclub teams were, if I remember correctly, 7 players, and 5 of them would have been kind of plus handicap amateurs, really strong young players that are maybe have professional aspirations, and then two of them are allowed to be pros. And so, highly competitive interclub matches, and then super fun and great culture and like great camaraderie. So that was a fantastic experience when we did it that way.
So you mentioned the sand belt area in Melbourne. Now I've seen pictures of those courses. What was it like playing them?
Yeah, sensational. Like, they're old. I think many of them were built in the 20s and maybe in the 30s and stuff. And with some of the very famous architects, Alistair McKenzie did the West Course at Royal Melbourne, and a number of other great designers did these. And they're, it's like you hear. There were pretty big expectations based on reputation, and then we go and it's like it's even better. The green complexes are special in all of them, and so the greens, the bunkering, the greens are firm and fast and definitely contoured, and then a lot of them, or on some of them, they roll in almost directly into the bunker edges, which are then these beautiful, gorgeous, flaring bunkers that are, interesting to play out of. And it gets, it's fun when you're in the fairway and then you're looking at that. You have to be highly specific with what you do going in. And if you don't, then you have really challenging and fun and interesting, interesting short game shots. So I would say fun and aesthetically gorgeous and architecturally beautiful. They're stunning. They're amazing.
The photos, they look very natural looking. A lot of scrub stuff around the fairways and in the greens.
Yep. And it all feels like you said, it feels natural and like, just beautiful to play. It feels like it's been there for a long time, but that it's also just gorgeous to look at. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. Uh, so when is your first match this year anyway?
Yeah, so we had a fall season, as we always do. We usually play like four tournaments in the fall, and then kind of this off off season, and then usually we start February 1st with practices. They have a doesn't matter, but they have a rule that you can't if you go in the middle of the year like we have, you have to wait 30 days to start practicing afterwards. So we'll start on the 10th for practice. We'll leave on the 15th night to go play a tournament in Savannah. So 15th of February. Sometimes we don't compete that early, but we are this year. Then our next thing will be our spring break trip in the middle of March. And then we have two tournaments end of March, beginning of April, and then our conference championship in the third weekend of April. So it's yeah, it's pretty compacted, although this year is a little bit more spread out. The Ivy League limits the number of days of competition that we can have, which is, it's great for protecting the academic integrity. And Harvard also has an internal rule that we can only miss 5 days of class per semester, which is also a really good rule for setting them up for academic success. But it's very hard to schedule. To
Yeah.
compete as much as we want and where we want within those guidelines. So anyway, it's we're very lucky. It's totally awesome. We got great kids. They're really good players. And but they're definitely they're student athletes. They're definitely balancing excelling academically while they're also trying to excel athletically. So
So what's the handicap of your number one player on the men's and women's teams?
yeah, and so on our men's side, we have currently our senior captain is the best player we've had, Brian Ma. Uh, I mean, last year he had an exceptional year. He made honorable mention All American, which as an Ivy male is like almost impossible to do. His scoring average last year was 69.55. He only had two
Wow.
rounds. He had one round at one over and one round at two over.
Wow.
Everything was par or better, and he's an exceptional player. So yeah, that's good. I don't know what his handicap would be, but +5 or plus something like that. Um, so yeah, I think people think of Ivy League golf as maybe they kind of get out there and play some matches and stuff. But these are all there's just so many good really good kids out there, and there's some kids per year that are also, exceptional academically, and those really fit with Ivy League golf, and so it's gotten quite competitive. It's really fun. So
And what about the women's team? What's her handicap? Or
yeah,
how does she,
so
what's her scoring average?
like our last year, Isabella Gomez, she's from Colombia. She won Ivy Championship individually. And I guess she's a +2 or something like that. So, um, yeah. So anyway, it's really good level, really competitive. It's great.
So in your conference championship, who do you play against? Just other Ivy League schools, or there's more teams in your conference?
Yep, most of the tournaments that we play in, I'd say, are probably a quarter Ivy schools and three-quarters something else. Occasionally, like Princeton's tournament, Yale's tournament, it'll be kind of all the Ivies plus, half the rest of the field is everyone else. But for a conference championship, it's just the Ivy schools. So, um,
Now, is there
yeah.
one Ivy League school that is traditionally a powerhouse in golf, or
Yeah, I think it's ebbed and flowed. Princeton has won a lot. Yale's won a lot. Columbia's won a couple since I've been, coaching with the men's side. I think they've won three, and we've won two. So, yeah, but and then on the women's side, I think historically it was Princeton and Yale, and then we had a fun stretch when I was coaching where the ladies they won eight. So our ladies did super well during that time, and then it's been fun kind of working on the men. They hadn't won one in 43 years when we won our first one, and then we won the next year, and then we had a super good year last year. Kind of our only tournament that we played medium in was our conference championship. So they felt they had an exceptional year, our best statistical year, won a couple times individually and team wise, but kind of didn't get it done in the conference championship. So we'll see what we can do this year.
so I'm thinking now with your resume, you've been the director of instruction at the Country Club of Brookline for 21 years. You were instructor at the PGA Learning Center for a while. Do you coach and teach your players, or do they have coaches and teachers back home that they that you kind of work with?
Yeah, it's cool. We had a leadership seminar at the country club in the end of the fall, and kind of myself and Steve Napoli, who's a kind of legendary golf professional up here in the Northeast, and he's now coaching at Holy Cross, and we were asked that specific question just because it's of interest, and um, you know absolutely perceptive question on your part. Everyone who's coming now, they're really accomplished competitive players, and so they've definitely, they've almost all of them have the people they've worked with for a number of years before they come. And so philosophically, I think it would be silly of me to try to say, just scrap what's made you successful so far and just only listen to me. Uh, so, so and yet, I'm a little bit unique in college coaching in that, like, my other full-time job is full-time teaching and skill instruction. And so, I'm capable of doing that. And it's something that I really like and I'm really passionate about, both, technique stuff and mental stuff. But it is, it's just um, try to have, I would say, a light touch. I definitely let them all know when they're in their recruiting process that I'm not going to jump in and try to change anything or everything, but that I can be a credible resource for them because I'm with them every day. And so even in my coaching at the club, I see people for lessons, but I don't get to see them practice every day and I don't get to see them compete every day. And it's something I really do like about the college coaching is that I get that insight. And so, I just let them know if I see stuff, then I will bring it up with them at the right time, in the right way, not in the middle of a tournament, not right before they play and compete. But I'll let them know that what I see. And if they ask my opinion, I'll let them know what I think is a way to kind of work. Um, but I also let them know, I see this going on. Check in with your home coach. and, see what you guys want to do about that. And so, as much as I don't do a ton of direct collaboration with them, the players' home coaches, I definitely encourage them to continue to build on what has made them successful.
So do you help them with their mindset? Get them pumped up or get them at the right mental frame of mind to go play in a tournament?
Try to for sure. Yeah, we do an exercise that I've done this every year with our players since I started college coaching, and I didn't remember exactly where I got it just because it was like an amalgamation of different things. But I was rereading "Golf Is Not a Game of Perfect" by Rotella last year, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of what I was trying to do here, and I didn't remember where it came from, but we kind of say it in it's a borrowed term and then borrowed idea, but kind of we call it ideal performance state, and just kind of trying to get into what is that for each player. And it's one of the good fun challenges of coaching in a team context is that everybody's has some commonalities, but everyone also comes at it from different ways. So the big challenge is how do you when do you message to the entire group but still leave enough room for individuality and what makes them successful. So the exercise is basically think of rounds where you've shot your lowest scores and write down everything that you can remember about those rounds. What you ate before, how much you slept, what you ate, during, did you talk to your playing partners, that kind of stuff. But also, were you very score focused, or were you more process focused? Did you let go of bad shots like right away, or did you dwell on them? Were you really technique focused, or were you more feel focused, or image focused, or something along those lines? And then try to do that for multiple different rounds where you've shot your lowest scores. Oh, did you ball strike it fantastically, or did you well enough, but your short game was great, your putting was great, all that stuff. And then I ask them to just cross reference those rounds and say which things are in common between those rounds and which are not, and then also which things of those are controllable or influenceable or were just something that happened that day. And so the controllable or influenceable items, those are the things that we ask them to do every day. And to me, that's what success is. If they're in that space and they've worked and they operated in those ways, no matter what they shot on a given day, they would have shot the best score they could have with the body and the technique that they brought on that given day. And that's what I think success is.
Yeah, very good, Kevin. Very good. Because today I played golf with a friend of mine. He's a professional saxophone player.
Amazing.
Yeah, and he's struggling with golf. I said, "Well, do you play the perfect saxophone every time you go to a gig, And he goes,
Perfect.
"No, I don't." Right?
Perfect.
So
And
we ask you, well, how do we do that? You just answered, how do we how do we do it?
great, great. I know a lot of times people need to be brought back into, something they really know super well. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I started early at saxophone. I worked at it for years and years and continue to work at it. And I still have, variations that
Right.
occur. And so it's good to know that. Yeah. Well said.
And cursing and giving up is not an option.
So it's very tempting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting though, because I was just thinking my high school golf coach, when he coached me, he was just starting out, but he was very good at helping people with our mindsets and our positive thinking and our just pumping us up for a match, And he was really good at it.
Good. Yeah, it's a talent and a skill, and everyone, coaches also have to stick with kind of their style that tends to bring out the best in players. I heard I don't know. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I root for the Patriots, but also for the 49ers, and was excited to see their comeback on Sunday and stuff. And they were down big at halftime, and I listen a lot to all athletes in all sports and just kind of what their mindset is and how they frame everything. It's with a team and they don't always know what I'm talking about with this, but I always say kind of I almost think the biggest thing is the conclusions you come to about anything, things that are good, you still can come to good or bad conclusions, or challenges that can come to good or bad conclusions. But you know, Purdy, the quarterback, said nobody in the locker room was panicking. We just, we're just like, let's just do what we need to. And Nick Bosa, who he said, I don't usually talk very much in the locker room, but I said to the guys, like, just do your job. Like, that's all you need to do. Like, try to win every play, try to do your best on every play. And I really like those mindsets that sometimes
Right.
pump up is the good and you need it. Sometimes it's like, no, just stay calm and stay focused, and you know what to
Right.
do. So
Right.
keep
Do
on
your
doing,
best.
do your best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds so cliche, but it's but it's also true. So
So you're at the Country Club of Brookline. Is that where that movie, the greatest game ever played, took place?
indeed, yeah, yeah. Before I started there, I read that book, by that great book by Mark Frost, which
Great
I know
book.
we know the Disney movie, which is great also. But the book I think is phenomenal, and I learned so much before starting there. And yeah, it's an amazing place. It did help put American golf on the map just because of what Francis Ouimet did in the 1913 U.S. Open. And
Tell people who might not know the
yeah,
story about
I'm gonna
Francis we met and the country club.
I'm gonna give it away, which is a spoiler alert. But yeah, but if you can read that book, The Greatest Game Ever Played, it's not just about that tournament, though it is. The whole story is kind of interwoven with that tournament, but it goes back and gives a lot of historical context about the players in it, but also kind of like society, well, golf, what was going on, and also society, what was going on at that time. But Francis Ouimet was a 20-year-old amateur, and whose home happened to be kind of literally across the street from the country club,
Is
and
that home still there?
it's still there. It exists. And
Wow.
actually, a couple years ago, after the previous owners who had lived there for a number of decades, it actually came up for sale, and a couple of the members from the country club bought it. And so I actually don't know its current status, but they at least controlled it for a while. And so it's amazing that it's still there and you can see it. But he grew up there, got into golf, did caddy some at the country club, kind of, uh, caddy didn't make a lot of money. And then he also started playing and showing prowess and was good at it. And, maybe his dad, rightly so, had concern about him spending time on something that didn't, make any money, and they didn't have a lot of money and stuff. But he became a really good player, and then qualified for the U.S. Open there. And after 4 rounds, he was tied with Harry Varden, six-time Open champion, Varden Grip, and Ted Ray, who were two of the best players in the world at the time, and were on a tour, a foreign tour of their own. They had actually moved the dates of the U.S. Open that year, from their original dates into a September dates, actually to accommodate, if I understand correctly, to accommodate them and their travel schedule. And they didn't disappoint. They tied for first with Ouimet, the 20-year-old amateur. And then, in the playoff the next day, the 18-hole playoff, Ouimet won. And, it's
Unbelievable.
still one of the great upsets ever, in golf, and one of the, great performances ever. And they said we still talk about it, but again, it helped to put American golf on the map. There's still like all sorts of offshoot stories. Also, Ouimet's caddy was a 10-year-old named a 10-year-old. So it just worked
That's
out that way.
unbelievable.
Ouimet's buddy was supposed to do it, but then the truancy officer said, you got to go to school, and so Eddie Lowry did it, and there
10
are
years
all
old.
great pictures of it. Like, that can't work out, but he went on to like do super well, moved out to the West Coast, became a successful car dealer, supported golf ongoing for a long time, including like he was a mentor of sorts to Ken Venturi. And I grew up on the West Coast, and kind of like my dad's a golf professional, and his era and stuff, and so I kind of knew about Ken Venturi, and how great he was. and this famous match at Cypress Point where Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson played against Ken Venturi and Harvey Ward, and that was helped to be set up through Venturi's backer, this guy named Eddie Lowry, and I knew that story way before I found out that Eddie Lowry was Francis Ouimet's caddy in the 1913 U.S. Open. So I just golf's amazing, and the connections and the history and all of
Now
that
there's a
stuff.
book on that match. There's a book on
So
that match, Venturi and Ward versus Hogan. Who won that match? I read the book. I can't remember who won the match.
yeah. So that's actually the third book of Mark Frost. So the first one was Greatest Game Ever Played, about 1913 U.S. Open, Francis Ouimet, and then the next one was called The Grand Slam, about Bobby Jones in 1930 winning the Grand Slam, and then the last
I
one in
haven't
that,
read that one.
yeah, which is sensational as well. And then the last book in that kind of trilogy is called The Match, and it was, yeah, that it was during the Crosby, which is now the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Uh, it was during the Crosby, and at the Hogan and Nelson were two of the best players in the world, and there was parties that went on early in the week, and one of Hogan's backers said, yeah, they're well. Anyway, one Eddie Lowry had said, well, I got Venturi and Harvey Ward, and I would put them against any two players in the world. And Coleman said, Hogan's backer said, well, how about Hogan and Nelson? And they ended up playing together. Yeah. And Hogan and Nelson won. And I think that kind of the last line was Hogan had a putt for birdie on the last hole. Well, I think Venturi made a birdie on the last hole, and then to force Hogan to have to make to win. And he said something like, "I'm not about to be beat by two amateurs," and then made his putt for birdie to win one up. And they shot like 68, 67, 64, and 63 that day. It was some of the best golf that anyone's ever seen. So
Right,
worth a
right.
read.
Yeah,
So
that was a great book.
um,
So you grew up on the West Coast. You went to UCLA. Did you play golf at UCLA?
I did. My last couple, I was a walk on, and then my last couple years I did. And that's where I met Rob Oosterhouse, who I know was on your podcast. But we played a couple years together on the
Right.
team, which was great. It was good for me. I hadn't. It was kind of mid high
Okay.
school. Yeah, mid high school, I kind of decided that I wanted to try to play in college, which is super late, even though I was around it growing up a lot because my dad, who's an exceptional player and teacher. I just, I was my older brother played every other sport, and so I kind of followed him, and then started applying myself to golf. And it took, it takes a while to get better at it. So my last year in school was a pretty good year, and so the work started paying off and stuff. So I tried to play for a couple years after school, and that was fun. I continued to get better, but I wasn't there soon enough. So
So you tried to play on the PGA Tour after you graduated?
yeah, I played mini tours for a couple years. I went to qualifying school 3 times, got to second stage 2 times. It was close to
Nice.
final. Yeah, so it was getting better all the time, but again, it wasn't quite there. So
Right. That still impresses me.
thanks.
Uh, so what was your first job in the golf business? Who gave you your first paycheck, your first dollar
Yeah,
bill in the golf business?
yeah. So I knew my dad's way of doing things. My dad was the head professional at San Francisco Golf Club for 41 years, sorry. Um, he played the tour he was an All-American at USC first, then played the tour for 7 years, and then came off tour straight into that job at San Francisco Golf Club. And, and then was a fantastic teacher. He had spent a year working for Claude Harmon at Wingfoot right before he went and played the tour. So, loved that side of things as well. He's kind of in that category, I think, kind of a rare category of top level player that also is a great teacher. Um, but, my dad kind of came at everything from the standpoint of here's best players in the world, here's how they think about it, here's their kind of like complementary systems of how they do things. Trevino might do it different than Nicholas, different than Player, but they work because of these things. And so, but when I stopped playing, then it was, do I want to stay in golf? And if I do, what route do I want to go? And I really was passionate about. I thought I could help people teaching, and I thought that I would have passion for it. So I actually I actually went to Club Med in Florida, where I stayed for 6 months.
Port St.
Kind of,
Lucie.
yeah, exactly. Just to kind of, a little bit decompress and also, teach a little golf in a very not, well, sorry, a less serious setting, to see if I kind of liked it versus not. And when I was there, I also reached out to my dad, knew Rick Martino, who was then the director of instruction for the whole PGA of America at the time. He had previously been director of instruction at Oakmont. And because it was right there, I kind of, reached out and just said, could I come observe a couple, and he was super receptive. He let me do that. And I just wrote to him afterwards and just said, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was, amazing to watch an exceptional teacher. And I know this seems completely out of the blue. I'm not even in the program or anything, but, if you ever are hiring a new and young instructor, I maybe way out of line, but I hope that you might consider me. And he did. So, it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, and he said, let's talk about this. And he ended up hiring me. And I got to work for him at the PGA Learning Center in Port St. Lucie. And it was an exceptional facility, but it was an exceptional teaching staff. So there was Rick, and then there was Kevin Compare, and then Judy Alvarez, and then Eric Johnson. So Kevin and Judy were both PGA Master Professionals, along with Rick Martino. Eric, became a master professional and then was director of instruction at Oakmont and the Breakers. And so, it was a really talented team. And so I got to be around them every day. I worked there for a
That
year
was
and
your
a half.
first job in the
That was,
industry?
oh yes. So that was amazing.
Wow.
So, with Rick,
Very
obviously,
lucky.
I was so lucky,
Yeah.
unbelievable on every level. Rick had me, doing kind of junior stuff and group stuff. We taught golf schools and individual lessons. And before he let me do anything, he had me observe, I think it was 150 hours of instruction before he let me lead a school. And I was doing other smaller clinics and individual instruction and stuff like that. So, and, started to go through the PGA program and stuff. But, and it was really fun. Rick was, all those teachers were amazing. There were also seminars that would come through with other best teachers that Rick led. Though that was amazing. And then Rick, a lot of his basis for doing things was biomechanics. He ran a golf research lab while he was in Pittsburgh when at Oakmont, with the University of Pittsburgh. So a lot of his justifications were, here's how the body moves and how it moves most efficiently. And I thought that mixed with my dad's way of like, here's best players in the world and here's what they do. I thought that they complemented each other really
Nice.
well.
Yeah, really. Yes.
So again, to be hired in that situation with not, I would say a decent amount of knowledge because of my dad, but not a lot of practical teaching experience, was so fortunate and so lucky for me. Um, and then, after a year and a half, I thought I'd probably go back to the West Coast where my family was and a lot of golf routes. My uncle is a golf professional, at some neat places. My two brothers are golf professionals, cousin, golf professional. So, thought I'd go back that way. But Rick recommended me, the teaching professional position at the country club had opened up, and Brendan Walsh, who's the sensational director of golf he was a head professional, but director of golf at the country club, reached out to Rick, and said, do you have a recommendation? And I was exceptionally fortunate that Rick recommended me to Brendan. So I met with and interviewed with Brendan, and was very fortunately offered the job, and I accepted sight unseen. I had not been to the country club, but Brendan's reputation preceded him, and then the club's reputation also was sensational. So again, 2003, I moved up to Massachusetts. I didn't know you could move east from Florida, but Massachusetts is east of Florida and north, and was so fortunate to start there.
Now, is Brendan still there?
Indeed, yeah. So again, he's one of the biggest reasons why I continue to be East Coast and not West Coast with my family. He's tied for the best in the business, I think, at kind of everything. He's an exceptional golf professional. He's an exceptional person. He's an exceptional family man. Um, the values that he has, how he executes every day, and maybe somewhat uniquely, he's one of the best mentors and preparers of young golf professionals to go get head professional jobs. And so he takes a lot of pride, a lot of time, a lot of energy and effort in developing people. And so I'm a little strange in that I'm off a little bit to the side of the operation. I mean, I work closely with everyone there, but all of those guys are cycling through over kind of a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year period until they're placed in head professional jobs. And they almost all of them get great jobs because they're great people and they've been trained exceptionally well. So
Right,
again,
right.
to work for Brendan is very, very fortunate.
Yeah, Brendan and I started out as assistant pros at the same time.
Did you
Yeah,
really? No
and in
way.
the Met section. And
Got
guess
it.
what? I don't think I might have played golf with him once, but just a nice guy, just a really nice person.
He's unbelievable. So I
Yeah.
just think the absolute highest of him.
So you had mentioned that your wife played in Miss Saigon, the play, and she was Miss Saigon.
So they that wasn't the role that she played. I think she played it that it's kind of a mock pageant that happens in it, but that's kind of a central theme. But yeah, she played a couple different roles, and we were both at UCLA at the same time. I didn't know her there. We just had mutual friends, and we were introduced like 10 years after college. I knew of her because, in part because she was on Broadway and in Miss Saigon. I thought that was totally fascinating, and it's an amazing journey that she took. It's so making the PGA Tour is really, really competitive, but Broadway is crazy, crazy competitive. There's so many talented people out there, and many people move to New York, with that dream and try to pursue it, and it's like impossible to break in. She was very fortunate through very hard work and talent that she had been auditioning for Miss Saigon for years, kind of regionally, and so she was very, very fortunate that she was cast in the Broadway cast uh, before moving to New York. So she moved to New York with a job in a long-running sensational Broadway show, and was able to do that show. She did a show called the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is also was 2 years on Broadway, and then she was able to be a successful working actor in New York. Lived in New York for 12 years, and so anyway, she's very proud of that. I'm very proud of her, and it's very amazing. So,
So what's one trait that makes her a great actor?
oh yeah, well, all sorts. Broadway is so interesting because it's acting and it's vocal. She's very strong vocally, which is really fun. And but I don't know. I guess you have to have that stuff. But it's
Those are the
also,
skills. Let's say
yeah.
what's one emotional trait that makes
Well,
her stand
this will
out?
this will sound weird, but I would say that it's will and determination, and
Okay.
again, he's able to channel that into acting, vocal, dancing, like everything. But when I first saw her in a show, I thought this is amazing, and then I thought about it more, and I learned more as we started dating, and then stuff, and then everything else, and I'd been to shows before, and I thought that's really neat, but then I started to learn through her, well, we all go to a show and then go home. And then that was one of 8 shows that they do that week. And then they do it again the next week and then again the next week. And like, if they're lucky, they get a long running show where there's stability and stuff. But at 8 shows a week, and it's really physically demanding, the vocals, the dancing, the choreography, the everything. So, you need the talent stuff, but you really need to be your will, determination, fitness, you have to be smart because, you know, you can't get sick, then your vocals go away or you can't dance. And so like, there's so much that goes into it that I just didn't have any idea before. So I have massive respect for it.
So, what would be one trait that she would say stands out in you?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to ask her. That's yeah. I guess one of them would be patience. Like I
Okay.
think with golf is we referenced that at the beginning. Golf is um it's a hard game. It's a super fun game. There's so many different things, but it takes a long time to get good at anything. Definitely golf played as a recreation. A lot of people want to, just kind of go be at a beautiful place with their friends and like share that time, but they also kind of want to do really well, but they don't have a lot of time to put into their games. They haven't worked super hard to become skillful most of the time, and sort of helping people find that balance between, well, I know what to work on, I know how to get better. I may not have as much time as, as a kid or as a professional to get better, but then, but I still want to do well, and trying to kind of navigate all that as well as possible is a big part of my job. So,
So, let's say June 21st falls on a Saturday.
mm,
Describe what that Saturday is like for you, because that's the height of the golf season, I'm assuming, for
good,
you.
good.
What is it like from 6 in the morning till 8 at night?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'll normally get up at 6:30. I'll be at the club. I don't live too far from the club, so I'll be at the club by 7:30. Typically start teaching at 8. I will usually give, 4 hour long lessons, or some I'll teach for 4 hours until noon. I usually kind of I block an hour at lunchtime. I don't know, a third of the time I will answer emails and phone calls during that hour. I'll get a quick bite to eat. Sometimes I'll do an emergency half-hour lesson during that hour. I'll teach from 1 to like 3:30, individual lessons, or occasionally, group lessons or something. I also block a half hour from 3:30 to 4 just for catch up or emergency lesson or something along those lines. And then I'll teach again from 4 to 6. So it's usually 8 to 6, 6 days a week. And I love it. I'm very lucky that I have a huge passion for it. My dad I reference, but he's my hero and inspiration. He was 41 years at San Francisco Golf Club, and that's a unbelievable place, unbelievable golf course. But he had a huge passion for teaching, has a huge passion for teaching, and still has a huge passion for golf. Like, he continues to compete, continues to work on his game. And having that example has been, so helpful and influential for me, because I still, I have energy and desire and passion to keep on, to keep on doing that. And I think, I didn't know, like I said early on, if I want, what that was, what making a living teaching is. The golf season in New England is shorter, so you can work those hours and put in that time, and bring full attention, passion, energy every single lesson, every single day. I think if I were in a 12 months a year place, I probably would be 5 days a week, not 6 days a week. So, and I'm also very lucky to have the change of speeds, which is, like you said, the summer seasons from mid-May until um, end of November. I'm teaching um, in spring, so February until mid-May. I'm mostly with Harvard and focused on the college team during that time, but I am teaching some when I'm not with the teams. And then in the fall, it's the same thing, September until the end of October. it's the team has the priority, but I'm still teaching usually 4 hours a day during that period of time. And in the summertime, it's it's kind of wall to wall, and I love it. It's amazing. And December and January, I get more time with family, and it's quieter during that period of time. Just a little bit of indoor teaching, and again, how lucky am I to get to do that at both of these places every day? So.
Yes. So the reason I asked that question, some people, oh, wait, he's got the life. Working from 8 to 6, teaching golf 6 days a week. That's a lot. Uh,
Yeah,
considering
it's
that every
busy. Yeah,
considering that other people get weekends off, holidays off, vacation time, it just you just can't catch up to those people. You know, your days off are going to be limited. No, even if
sure.
you took the month of January off, you still can't catch up to those people.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it's golf. I think those that go into the golf business, it's a passion, a deep passion. And if you're really lucky to like it that much, and then really lucky to be at a couple places, the people that I get to spend time with every day, both at the club, the membership is sensational, and people just treat me super well. The staff there is unbelievable and treat everyone super well. And then the Harvard, the people there are sensational, and the kids are sensational. So, I if I didn't have the great fortune to be at both places, I don't know, it may have taken a different road and a different path. But as it is, I'm lucky that in so many different ways, I'm lucky.
So, do you still play competitively or no?
Yeah, no, I love that too. And again, a huge part of that is because of my dad. So, the big question is it's the same thing as it's good for me, I think, because of the time is so limited to prepare. I have to really practice what I preach in terms of like, the minimum is be organized about what I'm working on. So I have to put in enough time on my own game so that at least I'm organized. If I can then go a little bit further and say organized and getting some reps so that I can have a little bit of expectation of execution, then great. If I can't, I need to not be upset about it. I just say
Right,
like
right, right.
available time. So, but this time, yeah, my wife thinks it's so funny, or maybe not funny, but yeah, that I'll come home from teaching all day. I'll, focus on her and the kids and have dinner and like not be focused on them. But then, if they're doing homework or doing other things, I'll start either chipping or like doing swings, in the living room with a mat and a camera, and she's like, "What are you doing? You just like all day long was golfing. You're doing more." And I know, but like it's different when I get to focus on what I'm trying to do versus focused on other people. So, but I think if a big part of my passion for helping everyone else is still that I love working at the game, and so I feel like if I lose that and I stop trying to do that, I don't know that my passion it would just be different. But I
I
like to.
agree with you. I agree
Yeah.
with you.
So anyway, I love to still compete and will continue to do it. It's usually like 5 or 6 tournaments a summer, something like that is what I have time for. And most of those are just 1 day stroke play events. But yeah, so we'll keep
Yeah,
doing
I
it.
think people can sense if you're still working on your game and enjoy playing. Students can sense that. People at the golf course can sense that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, they need to see it some. They need to feel it for sure. It was like the first thing I wrote down when I stopped playing, and then was delving into teaching a little bit, and it was don't forget what it's like to be a player. Um, and I try to, we wear different hats, and I have to come at things a little bit differently, obviously when I'm teaching someone, but if I forget and can't relate in that way, then I think that makes me a less good teacher.
Now, what about electronics? Are you into all these electronics that are out today?
Uh, as a teacher, I think I would say I'm a generalist. I do try to help people with every area of their game, um, and because of that, like it's my job to know as much as I can know. but then make sure that that gets conveyed to the player in a way that's accessible for them. So yes, we do. I mean, at we have TrackMan at the country club. We have multiple TrackMans because we need to spend time indoors at Harvard, so we're very fortunate in that way. I use video all the time. I use video in most lessons. I just have an iPad with me, that has coaching software, and I do some comparisons. Mostly, obviously you can't compare someone's body to someone else's non-like body and stuff like that. But I do think there's reference points in some areas and fundamentals that it's like, if people just know, oh, well, I'm trying to go a little more in that direction or a little less in that direction, and they understand why, and they understand the concept, and they understand that best players do that. I think reference points are helpful for delivering concepts. So, but force plates, I haven't done much of that stuff, but I read about that stuff and listen to people on that as much as possible, and then just translate it into what I think I can control. But yeah, I think especially for a lot of younger players, they like the technology side because they like it, they get into it, and if that's a deliverer of information that's accessible to them, then great, I'll definitely use it. So.
Right. I like what you said about reference points. I
Yeah.
took a lesson at Golf Tech before I came to Thailand, and the instructor pointed out a couple of things. Look, you're a little off the charts on these two reference areas. You might want to
Yep.
work on that, and that'll help you with
Super.
this, you know?
Super. Yeah. Yeah. So, because people don't know. I mean, I I think people's bodies are mind and body are like unbelievably smart. Like but they don't know what golf values are. So like whenever I see something going on with a swing, most of the time their bodies are trying to help them. They just don't know the available options like that best players have worked really hard to select. And so if I can steer them in that direction so that they know what that is a little bit more, then they say often they say, I wouldn't have done that, but I can do that. I just didn't know I was supposed to. So I get that feedback a lot.
Interesting. So I'm trying to think of any more questions here. I think we touched on everything, Kevin,
Yeah,
in a
that's
short
great.
time span here. You
That's
know what
awesome.
I found interesting? Your father was a golf pro, and you said you took the game up kind of late. Why was
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Mostly because he didn't force it at all. Um, and I have an older brother that is amazing, and he's a really good athlete, and he kind of played every other sport growing up, and he's 2.5 years older than me, so I super looked up to him, and because I was playing other things, and my dad wasn't forcing it, it was always there if I asked for it, but never forced. And I think I probably wasn't as good as I could have been young, and so it made it a struggle in early college, and then definitely trying to play after college. However, like my passion for the game, probably blossomed even stronger because it
Right,
was a struggle when
right,
I wanted it, and
right,
because I only had strongly positive association for it. Then that's why I'm in the business still. I think if it was forced earlier, I might have been better earlier, and I might have burnt out earlier, and I might not have been
right.
able to relate to other people. So yeah. So
Well,
I
out of
feel their struggle.
the people that I've interviewed, you definitely have a lot of enthusiasm and energy and passion, and it comes out, you know.
Thanks.
Uh, so
I hope.
what would you pass along to a 21-year-old starting out in the golf business?
Yeah, yeah. When I talk to people, and a lot of times I hear people say, like later in their careers where they've been successful, I hear them say, "I don't know if I'd go into the business now if I were starting out." And I don't I think that's not at all the advice that I would say. I think that a lot of times that's just because it's a long road and there's a lot there. But my point in bringing that up is because it's such a long road. Everyone when we're young, we want everything right now. We think we're talented, we're hardworking and stuff, but like it does take a long time to find your way, find the right fit, find the knowledge that's going to be useful, find different ways to relate to all different people. Um, so I, and there's a financial reality to it also, which is tough, which is starting out in anything. It's hard to make enough to be able to live and pay expenses and stuff. And that, I think that's part of why people like want it right now. But if you can find some balance between, I don't need a lot early on when I'm only taking care of myself. I should try to continually just invest as much as possible to, um, I think it's a balance between have an idea where you think you want to go, where your greatest success will lie, but also then being, open enough and patient enough to just learn as much as you can from, as many people as you can. I think sometimes that might take you in a direction you might not want to go. So you have to be a little careful with that. But if you can, keep pointing your ship where you think you want to go, you can have little like course corrections and stuff, but mostly keep going in that direction. But then, just keep learning as much as you can, as often as you can.
Well, I'm going to follow the Harvard golf teams now, going forward, and
Thanks.
I'll check to see how you all are doing.
Great.
This was great, Kevin. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, I enjoy being with you, Leo. Thank you very much for the time and your style and your knowledge and everything. You make it super fun. So the people there are lucky, and enjoy Thailand, and we'll hope to be in touch in the future.
Thank you, Kevin. Good luck this year.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Bye bye.